Spending a year in space fundamentally rewires your body in ways most people never imagine. When astronauts return from long-duration missions aboard stations orbiting Earth, they discover something unsettling. Their bodies remember being weightless. Their bones recall floating. Their cardiovascular systems adapted to an environment that no longer exists. And here is what almost nobody discusses. Some of these changes never fully reverse. The human body was shaped by millions of years of evolution under the constant pull of gravity. Remove that force for 12 months, and you are not just temporarily changing your physiology. You are creating a version of yourself that Earth no longer recognizes. But the real question is not whether your body changes. The question is what happens when those changes become permanent. Most people assume astronauts go to space, come back, do some physical therapy, and return to normal within weeks or months. That assumption is dangerously oversimplified. Current data from long-duration space flights indicates something far more complex. Your skeleton does not simply weaken in microgravity. It restructures. The architecture of your bones changes at the cellular level because your body no longer needs to support weight. Estimates suggest astronauts lose 1 to 2% of bone density per month in space. Do the math. 12 months means potentially losing 12 to 24% of bone mass in critical areas like the hips and spine. Now consider this. Even after years of recovery protocols on Earth, some astronauts never fully regain what they lost. Their bones remain fundamentally altered. Think about what that means for a moment. Your skeleton is not just structural support. It is a living organ that produces blood cells, stores minerals, and maintains your entire framework. When that system changes permanently, you are walking around in a body that remembers being somewhere else. The bone loss itself creates cascading problems. Weaker bones mean higher fracture risk for the rest of your life. It means your body has to compensate in ways that stress other systems. The skeleton you return with is not the skeleton you left with, but bones are just the beginning. Your cardiovascular system undergoes an even more dramatic transformation. On Earth, your heart works constantly against gravity to pump blood upward to your brain. Remove gravity, and suddenly that workload disappears. Blood pools differently. Pressure equalizes throughout your body. Your heart realizes it no longer needs to work as hard, so it adapts. It becomes more efficient for a weightless environment. The problem emerges when you return to a world where gravity exists. Your heart and blood vessels have spent an entire year learning to function without resistance. Now they must relearn everything in reverse. Astronauts returning from year-long missions often experience severe orthostatic intolerance. Stand up too quickly, and their cardiovascular system cannot compensate fast enough. Blood pressure drops. Vision blurs. Some pass out. This condition can persist for months or even years after landing. In some documented cases, astronauts report feeling dizzy or lightheaded during sudden movements for the remainder of their lives. The cardiovascular system creates new neural pathways and structural changes that become ingrained. Your body remembers the easier workload of space, and returning to Earth feels like suddenly adding weights to a runner who trained without them. The changes extend beyond what you can measure with medical equipment. Fluid distribution in space creates unique pressures. Without gravity pulling fluids downward, astronauts experience what researchers call the puffy face bird leg syndrome. Fluids shift toward the upper body and head. This creates pressure on the optic nerve and can cause vision changes. Some astronauts develop flattening of the eyeball or swelling of the optic disc. These changes can be permanent. Years after returning to Earth, some astronauts still require corrective lenses for vision problems that did not exist before their mission. The pressure inside your skull changes when you spend a year floating, and your eyes pay the price. Here is where it gets worse. Your vestibular system, the intricate network in your inner ear that controls balance and spatial orientation, completely recalibrates in microgravity. For 12 months, your brain receives contradictory signals. Your eyes tell you one thing about orientation. Your inner ear tells you another. Eventually, your brain adapts. It learns to ignore certain signals and prioritize others. This neural remapping is not superficial. It is a fundamental rewiring of how your brain processes spatial information. When you return to Earth, your vestibular system must relearn everything again. But the neural pathways created in space do not simply disappear. They remain as ghost circuits in your brain, occasionally interfering with your sense of balance and coordination years after landing. Some astronauts report persistent problems with depth perception and hand-eye coordination long after returning from space. Activities that once felt automatic, like catching a ball or walking down stairs, require conscious effort. The brain struggles to reconcile conflicting information from systems that learn two different versions of reality. You become someone caught between two worlds, never fully belonging to either. Most discussions about space adaptation focus on physical changes, but there is something more insidious happening that few people mention. Your immune system degrades in space. Research indicates that the microgravity environment and increased radiation exposure weaken immune function. White blood cell production changes. immune responses become less effective. After a year in space, your body is demonstrably worse at fighting infections and potentially less capable of detecting and destroying abnormal cells. Some studies suggest this immune suppression may contribute to long-term health risks, including increased cancer susceptibility. The radiation exposure alone from a year in space exceeds safe limits established for Earth-based environments. You accumulate damage at the cellular level that cannot be undone. Then there is the aspect nobody wants to acknowledge directly. Your muscles atrophy despite hours of daily exercise. Current space station protocols require astronauts to exercise 2 to 3 hours every day just to minimize muscle loss. Despite this intensive regimen, muscle mass still decreases significantly. The muscles do not just get smaller, they change composition. Fast twitch fibers convert to slow twitch. The metabolic properties alter. When you return to Earth, rebuilding muscle is not simply a matter of working out harder. Your muscles have to relearn how to function under load. Some astronauts never fully regain the strength and muscle mass they had before launch. Their bodies plateau at a diminished capacity. But here is the twist that reframes everything. The greatest challenge of spending a year in space is not any single physiological change. It is the cumulative effect of multiple systems adapting simultaneously in ways that conflict with each other upon return. Your bones adapt one way. Your heart adapts differently. Your brain rewrites its spatial processing. Your immune system weakens. Your muscles restructure. Each system changes according to its own logic, optimizing for a microgravity environment. When you return to Earth, these systems do not simply reverse their adaptations in sync. They each struggle separately to readapt, creating a cascade of conflicts within your own body. You become a walking contradiction, a biological system trying to exist in an environment it is no longer fully designed for. The real enemy is not space itself. The real enemy is the irreversibility of deep adaptation. Evolution designed the human body for Earth gravity over millions of years. 12 months in microgravity is enough time for profound changes, but not enough evolutionary pressure to create a new stable baseline. You end up in a liminal state, permanently altered but not transformed enough to function optimally in either environment. You are stuck between two worlds with a body that remembers both and fully belongs to neither. Consider the psychological dimension that compounds everything else. Astronauts returning from long-duration missions often describe a profound sense of disconnection. They have experienced something most humans never will. They have seen Earth from a perspective that fundamentally changes how they perceive existence. But they return to a world that expects them to simply readjust and move on. The physical challenges of readaptation are difficult enough. Add the psychological burden of carrying experiences and perspectives that isolate you from nearly everyone around you, and the challenge becomes existential. You are not just readapting your body. You are trying to fit a fundamentally changed consciousness back into a society that cannot fully comprehend what you experienced. Some astronauts report feeling like they are performing a role of their former selves rather than actually being that person anymore. The body remembers space, the mind remembers weightlessness, and Earth, with all its gravity and density and heaviness, feels almost foreign. This sense of permanent otherness rarely resolves completely. You spent a year becoming something different. Returning does not mean going back. It means learning to exist as a changed being in an unchanged world. The data suggests that full recovery from a year in space may be an illusion. Most astronauts achieve functional recovery. They can walk, work, live relatively normal lives. But normal is not the same as unchanged. Their bodies carry permanent markers of having adapted to an environment humans were never meant to inhabit for extended periods. Bone density that never fully returns. Cardiovascular responses that remain slightly off. Vision changes that persist. Balance issues that linger. A rewired brain that occasionally still expects to be floating. These are not temporary inconveniences. They are permanent alterations to who you are at a physiological level. The universe does not care whether humans adapt to space or not. It will continue expanding, indifferent to our biological limitations. We are creatures of gravity trying to exist in environments where gravity barely exists. Every long-duration spaceflight is an experiment in how far we can push human biology before the changes become irreversible. The answer emerging from decades of data is sobering. 12 months is long enough to create changes that last a lifetime. Your body will fight to readapt when you return. It will recover many functions, but something fundamental shifts during a year in space. You return to Earth carrying a body that remembers weightlessness, and that memory never completely fades. Thank you for watching. If you found this exploration of long-duration spaceflight adaptation compelling, you might enjoy learning more about the extreme environments astronauts face. I would be grateful for your support, and I will see you next time.